From the studios of Staten Island Community Television, you're watching In the Bleachers, the TV show for the world's most passionate sports fans. Hello and very happy Martin Luther King Day, everyone. I'm Jaime Hixson.
And I'm Hector Bosa.
Joining us from the phone.
Sexiest man on cable access TV.
You're also the sickest man on cable access TV,
I
literally.
am not sick.
You told me before the show that you were sick and not feeling well.
I lied. I just didn't want to come in because I had a couple of women coming up.
You are such a little liar, man. Why are you always lying?
I'm not a liar.
Why are you always lying?
Yeah, it's not lying. It's the truth. You're just jealous.
No, I'm not. I'm not jealous. You just lying.
You're just jealous, being me all over again.
Just like you lied about being the world heavyweight champion, just like you lied about your drinking issue, just like you lied about every single other thing.
It's truth. It's truth. It's on TV. T-Dog Tomasio will tell you, Rosanna Robertson will tell you that it's truth about me being the heavyweight champion.
That whole reign was a sham.
Now, the only person that is delusional is you.
No, I'm not delusional.
And the only person is you.
No, I am not delusional.
Let's go back to sports for a second.
Please.
Because there's a lot to talk about.
Please.
For instance, the Yankees had eyes on this particular gentleman.
Yeah, Yu Darvish. And also Manny Machado.
And he passed up on $160 million. So the Yankees are not getting him.
Well, it doesn't really surprise me when you think about it because he's not really comfortable in a really big market. I mean, he had barely 2 months in Los Angeles, 2 or 3 months in LA. He did well, but for some reason, he just does not like the limelight of the big city, which is interesting considering that he was pitching not too far from Dallas for 6.5 years, 7.5 years.
Yeah, but the thing is, Dallas is different than LA. We have more coverage.
Dallas has coverage too, though. Although it's not like here or Chicago or LA, but their media is pretty significant.
Yeah.
So what else do you have for us?
Also, Manny Machado. There's no deal for him at the moment.
Yeah, and they're going to go to arbitration, so it looks like a judge is going to have to decide how much he's going to make for this year, and then if he doesn't get traded, either before spring training or even before the deadline for that matter, he's going to be a free agent at the end of 2018.
Well, I can tell you this. I think if you're not going to get him cheap, you might as well wait for him till he gets in the free agency because you may be able to get him. If he wants to be on a good team, he'll be on a good team. If he wants to be just to get money, he'll have that decision as well.
Yeah. A guy like him, though, a 25-year-old power-hitting third baseman who plays great defense, he's going to command a lot of money. That's for sure. The question is, from where?
Exactly, and I'm sure the Dodgers will be in it. Most of the major leaguers, major baseball guys will be in it.
Mm-hmm. Probably the Yankees, probably the Red Sox, maybe the Dodgers.
And here's the thing, too, with all this. Maybe he doesn't want to play in
the New York area.
In big league atmosphere as well. But you never know. There's a lot of people like Reggie Jackson. He was one of those people that enjoyed playing in the big league atmosphere.
Yeah, he really thrived here.
That enjoy playing the big league atmosphere, and then there's a lot of people that don't enjoy it.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to have to decide whether it's about money or does he want to go on a winning team?
Well, I would think that he would want to play for a contender because Baltimore's got a decent team, but I'm not really sure if you can call them a contender yet because they're low on pitching and they're really weak at catcher. So I'm not really sure what the Orioles want to do here.
Well, if they do decide to trade him to the Yankees, which is somewhat of a mistake because why would you trade a player within your own division unless you're getting something really back for him? Who would you trade, or who should the Baltimore Orioles request from the Yankees?
Prospects, and maybe a major league ready player. But knowing the Orioles, if they can't sign Machado, then they're going to want a third baseman in return. And in all likelihood, they're going to want one of those prospects that the Yankees have. Either Glaber Torres or Miguel Andujar, maybe Tyler Wade.
And who do you think they should get rid of or give up?
Who should the Yankees give up?
Yes.
If they want Machado really bad, I think they might have to sacrifice either Andujar or Torres because those are the two best prospects that they have.
Or would you give him up for him?
Would I give them up for him? Torres and Andujar are two prospects that come around once in a lifetime, maybe. So my answer would be no.
We just have them play third base.
Yeah.
And hope for the best and expect the worst.
Mm-hmm. Not only that, but Torres is the real deal. I mean, he's a really good contact hitter, good defender. The only thing with him is he's coming off Tommy John surgery, so it could be that the Orioles might want maybe a pitcher or maybe somebody else to fill the void at third.
Yeah. And then you have Yankees trying to trade Jacoby Ellsbury.
Yeah, that's been out there for a while because it's more of a salary dump than anything else. Plus, he's just been a real disappointment at the plate. He's been barely a 260 hitter for his time as a Yankee.
Yeah,
and what's that?
I said, considering he came from Boston, who he did very well with, but
yeah.
That short fence helps a lot.
Mm-hmm.
That could be one of the things that really helped out.
Plus, the Yankees are really crowded in the outfield. Not only do they have Ellsbury, they have Brett Gardner. There's also Aaron Judge. They made the trade for Giancarlo Stanton. And there's also Aaron Hicks, who they just gave a new contract to avoid arbitration. And there's the kid that they acquired from the Padres, Jabari Blash, who's supposed to be a really good defensive outfielder.
So they'll have five. So they'll have six outfielders, and then him seven.
Quite possibly.
Pending upon, because now he's willing to go. At least he's willing to waive. Depending upon which team they're trading him to.
Mm-hmm.
He was willing to go to the Giants.
Yeah.
And for that other pitcher that the Giants wanted to unload as well and didn't really get the opportunity to unload.
That would have made a lot of sense. Unloading one outfielder for one pitcher, it would have solved the Yankees' fifth starter problems. Maybe they should try and revisit that.
It all depends because the Yankees wanted a sixth starter. That's why they were going after Graves.
Mm-hmm.
Because they wanted to have, they just wanted to have six starters for some reason, so that Stanton and not Stanton, Sabathia could have a break once in a while, and other guys could have breaks in between.
Yeah. It's funny that you mentioned pitching because the one guy that the Yankees were trying to get, Gerrit Cole, it was thought that maybe he was traded over to Houston, but then the Astros said they never had a deal in place. And now I just saw Cole signed a new contract with the Pirates, so he's going to be under contract for at least a year with somebody, whether it's the Pirates or somebody else.
Well, at least with that involved, if they trade him, at least they'll know that the team has him for 1 year.
Mm-hmm.
So that was probably a good choice involved.
True.
So yeah, you have that going for the New York Yankees, and but so far they're pretty solid.
So far, so good. Yeah.
They're pretty solid at pitching, and they're pretty solid at 1 through 5, 1 through 6.
Mm-hmm. Pitching-wise and outfield-wise, they're good. They just need to fill some holes at second and at third.
Well, I think they have the guys.
It's just a matter of who they want to give a shot to.
The people that you mentioned, they may have to switch positions.
Possibly.
But I don't think it's that hard.
And I also heard that the Yankees may want to give Glaber Torres a shot to take away the starting shortstop job from Didi Gregorius this spring, which is a really bold move considering Didi had a really solid 2017.
Well, they were considering the other guy first before he got hurt.
Mm-hmm.
But if you just want to put pressure on Didi Gregorius, maybe they could put him at third the way they did Rodriguez.
Possibly.
Because you have to have a strong arm.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're going to do anything, you have to do it right now. And he should have been learning third base if you were going to do something like that.
Yeah.
Ahead of time, because switching from a short to third, people say it should be easy, but it's a different position.
Yeah.
It's a different position nonetheless. Unless you're a utility field and you're used to bouncing around.
Mm-hmm.
But, everything seems to be going the Yankees' way right now.
So far, so good. Let's see what happens in the spring, though, because they still have questions to answer.
But the questions shouldn't be that hard. It should be pretty easy.
Here's one question, though. Aaron Boone is the manager now. This is his very first manager's job, and he's doing this in the media capital of the world. How do you think he's going to do in his managerial debut?
Well, I look at it, when you have a very good team, the only thing you just have to worry about is egos.
Mm-hmm.
Egos, and if you have a very good bench, then you should be a great manager.
This is true.
Without even having to flinch an inch, It's going to be one of those things where it's common sense.
Mm-hmm.
And he's been commentating for a very long time, and on commentary, he gives very good ideas.
Yeah.
And he's always saying a lot of things of that nature. So if you're coming from TV saying, "Oh, well, I would do this and I would do that," well, saying it is one thing and then doing it is another when you're actually the manager.
This is so true.
Because there's only one person that I know of that wasn't even a baseball player, but he went from commentary to manager.
Mm-hmm.
And I forgot the guy's name, but he went from commentary to manager, and he did pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
I think he played for the Toronto Blue Jays, I think. He was the manager for the Toronto Blue Jays at one point.
Would that be Buck Martinez?
Probably. Boy, if I remember correctly, I don't think he played. I think he just went from broadcasting to manager, and that was it.
Mm-hmm.
But, as for the other teams, the Orioles, the Boston Red Sox, you really haven't heard much of anything from them.
Very, very little. I mean, the Red Sox have been mostly laying low, if you ask me. I mean, they haven't been completely quiet. I mean, I'm sure that they've made their share of moves. But at the same time, the Yankees have pretty much dominated all of the headlines in the Eastern Division. Let's see. Signing Mitch Moreland and also activating Stephen Wright from the disabled list. And that's pretty much it.
Yeah, and even the Mets right now, Jay Bruce going back to the Yankees. Mets.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good sign, Jay, because anybody that wants to play for a New York team, you have to have some type of energy in you, and considering that how the Mets treated Jay Bruce,
Mm-hmm.
they wanted to get rid of him, then he got hot, then they didn't want to get rid of him, but they had to get rid of him, and now you want him to come back,
Mm-hmm.
and he's playing back. They must be giving him a big contract.
3 years, $39 million. I mean, it's pretty respectable when you think about it, considering that Carlos Santana signed for 3 years and $60 million with the Phillies. Not only that, but the Mets can have Bruce go back and forth between the outfield and first base in case things don't work out for Dominic Smith, because as of right now, Dominic Smith is being penciled to be the everyday first baseman. And he didn't really show that much with the Mets last year. He was shaky at first base. He was really shaky at the plate. I mean, he had major problems going after breaking pitches. Showed a little power, but my guess is he's going to need a little bit more seasoning someplace, whether it's in the minor leagues or whether it's with the Mets as a trial by fire. But getting Jay Bruce was so huge for them. Now they can team him up with Cespedes, and when he comes back from injury, Michael Conforto, and they can have a really, really strong outfield.
Yeah, and Lucas Duda wasn't the greatest first baseman, I don't think.
No, he never was.
And also injury struck him a lot too. So, is it really much of a difference between having this kid and Lucas Duda?
Defensively, not that much. Offensively, Lucas gave them quite a bit of power.
But
And
he struck out a lot too.
Yeah, he was a strikeout waiting to happen as well. But my issue with them is, can they get the right amount of defense at first base from Dominic Smith that they did from Keith Hernandez all those years ago? The answer is probably not, because Smith is more of a one-dimensional type of player from what I've seen of him. But if he can get the right amount of coaching from an infield instructor, maybe he could be solid, if not great.
And Mets nearly trade for Jason Kingpins.
For who?
Mets nearly traded for Jason Kingpins.
Oh, Jason Kipnis of the Indians, yeah. That would have been so huge for them. He would have solved their second base problems just like that. Jason Kipnis is such a good all-around player, but unfortunately, the Indians couldn't agree to terms with him.
No, I'm reading how the deal worked out with Cleveland Indians and in fact, there were people on both sides who thought they had a deal, but apparently it was killed by someone at the top, very likely over money.
Oh, brother.
So again,
what a shock.
yeah, again, what a shock.
Whereas the Yankees spend money, the Mets always seem to find a way to be penny pinchers.
You know, you talk about James Dolan, and you talk about the Mets organization as well when it comes to money and not doing the right moves, not making the right moves. 1986 was a golden era, but management has never been right.
Or competent.
At least Dolan is willing to show out money, even though he does the wrong things himself. But at least he's willing to deal out the money. Now he's just laying back, which is good, and letting the people, the GM, do his job the way they're supposed to be doing, sticking his nose where it doesn't belong sometimes. But the Mets organization, they're going by, okay, we can't go over the luxury tax. But if you can get a guy like this who can solidify, again, your team and can make your team better, that's something you go by. Or do you have someone in mind that you're going to dump the team again, and you're going to say to the fans, hey, listen, we got a plan. It's going to take 3 years again, and then wind up doing nothing.
So true. That's the difference between the Yankees and the Mets. Whereas the Yankees are fearless, yet try to be smart about some of the deals that they make without worrying about the luxury tax. The Mets continue to worry about spending too much money, all because of the luxury tax.
Now, the Mets have made some deals in the past that were great deals, but they just never panned out.
Yeah.
And I don't know if the Mets are cursed with this problem, but they're still paying what's his name? What's that?
They're still paying off the contracts of a couple of people. Bobby Bonilla for one.
Exactly. And that's a huge contract. And there was a guy that was supposed to make a big difference and really didn't do really much.
Jason Bay, anyone?
Another one. Supposed to have started off well, but wind up doing nothing. So can you blame them for not? When do you pull the plug, and when do you not? When do you decide to go and say, okay, I think this guy's worth it?
They should have pulled the plug on Kipnis. Or they should have pulled the plug on, not necessarily pulled the plug, but pulled the trigger on the Kipnis deal. He would have been really, really good for second base. He would have given them contact hitting, he would have given them defense, and he would have given them a really good clubhouse guy.
Well, they say here, while Mets higher-ups didn't see Kipnis as a good value, he has a $30.5 million guarantee over the next 2 years of an uncharacteristic so year.
Oh, brother.
So they were afraid to pay even more to bring back, it's, again, was he worth all that money? You're never going to know. And how's the rest of the teams doing so far?
Depends on which division you're talking about.
The National League now, because we've done the American League, and so far nothing. You haven't heard no big splashes from the American League.
Well, of course, we mentioned the Carlos Santana deal that the Phillies gave him, 3 years and $60 million. The Marlins wound up unloading Giancarlo Stanton, and they got Starlin Castro out of the deal. Now Castro wants out because he does not want to be part of a rebuilding situation with the Marlins. And the Braves are going with a whole bunch of young players. They're really stocking up on the farm. They have the best farm system in baseball right now.
And the Braves normally, when they do that, towards the end, usually have a really good team.
Mm-hmm.
It takes them 2 or 3 years, but at least you have something to look forward to with them.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to the Mets, very rare do you have a year where you go, oh, yeah, look forward to the people that come up.
Yep.
With the Yankees, you have people that are the Yankees were another team that at some point they didn't have a very good farm system.
Yeah.
They go through their years as well. And I'm glad to see, some people never liked Omar Minaya. And some people did.
He had his moments where he made some pretty good deals, but then he also had his moments where he made some deals that really left the fans scratching their heads. For example, he was the one that was instrumental in signing Jason Bay. Of course, at the same time, he was also there when Matt Harvey was drafted. He was also there when Pedro Martinez was signed. And going back to making the trade for Luis Castillo, who became a complete flop. So you have to take the good with the bad with this guy.
That is true. It's just one of those things where you don't know what's going to happen. But with the National League, has there been any other big splashes?
In the National League? Well,
yeah.
Let's check it out. We mentioned what's going on in the Eastern Division. The Braves are going young. The Marlins continue to go young. The Phillies made their big splash getting Carlos Santana. As far as the Nationals are concerned, let's see. Signing Matt Adams to be insurance at first base. Signing Brandon Kinsler. They also brought Adam Eaton off the disabled list. They brought Sean Kelly off the disabled list. Other than that, they've had very, very, very few things to really, really write home about. Now, going to the Central Division, the Cubs, who won the title 2 years ago and have made the playoffs the last 3 years running, which is really, really big for them. Signing Steve Cishek, signing Drew Smyly, signing Brandon Morrow. So they really, really loaded up on pitching. That's for sure. They also wound up bringing in Dario Alvarez. Getting Brandon Morrow was pretty interesting because he's going to give them a lot of depth in the bullpen. So basically, the Cubs have gotten themselves quite a bit of depth in their pitching staff right now.
Have you heard anything from Todd Frazier?
Todd Frazier's still available, and from what I understand, the Mets might be interested in him to be their third baseman.
And so are the Yankees.
The Yankees, too. Both the Yankees and the Mets are interested in Frazier. If I'm not mistaken, I think Brian Cashman has been kicking the tires on Frazier, talking to his agent, see exactly where he stands and what he wants contract-wise, because I know for a fact Todd Frazier wants more than 1 year in his deal.
And you can't blame him.
Of course, he wants security.
I mean, he blasted more runs, 67 the past 2 years. Better than even Longoria at 56. And
speaking of Evan Longoria.
Evan Longoria, not even Longoria. Sorry about that. I'm thinking.
It's funny that you mention Evan Longoria because Evan Longoria over the winter became a San Francisco Giant.
Wow.
He got traded by the Rays to the Giants in a really, really big deal. It was a 5-player deal that took place just last month. Christian Arroyo, Denard Span, and a couple of pitching prospects were involved in the deal. So now the Giants, not only did they bring in Pablo Sandoval off waivers, but now they have an all-star third baseman who can give them great power and great defense at third. And they also brought in Nick Hundley for catching depth to back up Buster Posey. And they also wound up making a deal with the Texas Rangers to get some depth in their farm system.
So how do they measure up?
San Francisco's a lot better. I mean, granted, last season was a really, really difficult season for them, mostly because they had a ton of injuries. But if everyone can stay healthy this time, I think they might be able to make some noise in the West this year.
They'll make a big hay out there.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to be Chicago that's going to make a big whoopee, and
definitely count on Chicago to be a contender. I think Washington is still a contender in the Eastern Division. The rest of the East is just ranging from mediocre to awful right now. The Central Division, St. Louis is going to be a player with Chicago. Out West, the Western Division is going to be the best division in baseball, I think, because you had 3 teams coming out of the West making the playoffs last year, 2 of which played each other for the wild card.
2 of them did play.
Mm-hmm.
The wild card, you said.
Yep. Arizona has gotten better. Colorado got significantly better. As far as Arizona is concerned, it's been mostly bringing in some non-roster invitees. I see that they brought in the ex-Met Josh Tolley to probably provide some catching depth. And they also wound up getting some pitching depth from the minor leagues. And they also brought in the former Red Sox pitcher, Henry Owens. So the Diamondbacks really loaded up on pitching. And they also got the pitcher from the Rays, Brad Boxberger, but he was basically trade bait. So right now, the Marlins are probably going to the Diamondbacks, I should say, are going to be really looking to make a play to win the West this year. As for Colorado,
so each division you would say would be the Yankees, Boston, and Orioles, and then from the other division, you would say who?
From the other division,
the top three.
The top 3, well, I would say the Yankees, yes. I would probably say Boston would be coming away as a wild card. Baltimore, I think, is slightly better. Tampa is still rebuilding. Tampa is definitely rebuilding. Toronto is probably doing a rebuilding job. They probably want to get younger. That's why they turned away Jose Bautista, who's still looking for a job. The Central Division, I still think Cleveland is the cream of the crop. Minnesota is going to be a lot better this year. They've got great young players and a really solid pitching staff. The Western Division, Houston's going to be really dangerous. The defending champion is not going to rest on their laurels. They're going to probably load up on a little bit more pitching. They almost got Gerrit Cole, but they admitted that there was no deal, although they could probably still make a deal for him in time for the spring. Texas is going to be having some problems. The Los Angeles Angels have been a complete disappointment. Oakland is still rebuilding. Seattle, if they had maybe a little bit more pitching, I think they could probably make some noise out there. So right now, I would say it's the Yankees, the Red Sox, the Indians, the Astros again, and maybe Minnesota again, coming out of the American League.
And National?
National League, I still like Washington to win the East. They're head and shoulders above everybody else. The Central Division, I still like the Cubs. I still think St. Louis is going to be a player in that division too. The West, I still think the Dodgers are the better team, although be careful of San Francisco, because San Francisco, now that they have Evan Longoria, You team him up with some of the other guys who come back healthy, I think the Giants can be a really big player in that division. Arizona and Colorado are also dangerous. San Diego continues to rebuild.
Those are good teams. I was just reading about Todd Frazier, and he's one of those kids that were the Little League legend from Town River, New Jersey.
That's right. Oh, and I also saw that we mentioned the American League East. Josh Donaldson re-signed with Toronto, only for 1 year, though, because they wanted to avoid arbitration. But he's going to be making a pretty penny, $23 million.
They have here, which new Major League manager will make the biggest impact? And, that's something new because there's a lot of managers out there as well. And I think Boone will be okay. It all depends who's his bench coach are.
Yeah.
I wish they would bring back some of the old Yankees. Like some of the people that won that were there.
Right.
With him that understand how he thinks. The way Joe Torre had Popeye, as they used to call him, but I forgot his name. But that, if you have a good bench, you'll be okay.
Yeah.
Because they're supposed to help you. It's like every other organization. If you have a good bench, that's supposed to help you in a lot of ways. But going from there, the Nets and the Knicks and those divisions coming up.
Yeah.
What do you think about the Nets right now? They're struggling.
Oh, they're struggling badly.
They're struggling badly.
They're struggling really, really badly. And the fact that DeAngelo Russell is still not with the team because he's hurt is not helping matters. He was one of their best scorers, and it was no coincidence that the Nets, the Brooklyn Nets, were actually competitive with him in the lineup. But ever since he got hurt, they've hit rock bottom.
One player sometimes makes a lot of a difference.
Yeah.
But you can't rely on that workhorse too much, because if the workhorse breaks down, if you don't have nobody behind you to help him out, then it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
There's only one Jordan, one LeBron, and again, once they go down, unless you have a really good bench, because even they can't do it alone. They can help you, but they can't do it alone.
True.
Not even Jordan can do that.
Yeah, I mean, he needed Scottie Pippen and Phil Jackson as his head coach, and for his first trilogy of championships, Bill Cartwright, Horace Grant, and for the second trilogy, Dennis Rodman, Bill Wennington, Ron Harper, et al.
But look at that. You had Bill Cartwright, who was an ex-Knick, who couldn't do much for some reason with the Knicks.
That's because he kept on getting hurt.
Well.
His last, 3 out of his last 4 years with the Knicks, he kept missing time because he broke his foot.
Baby Bill or Medical Bill, as they used to say.
Yeah.
He was something else. But DeAngelo Russell was playing in the D League. He's trying to build himself up in the D League.
Yeah, he's trying to round his game back into shape by playing some games in the D League. Hopefully, it won't be much longer before he gets officially activated from the injured list, though, because they really, really needed him. And already it's the halfway point of the season, and I don't want to say it's too late for them, but can he do anything to try and make them competitive the second half of the year?
Well, right now, would you want to make the playoffs if you were the Nets?
Every team wants to make the playoffs, but at the same time, they want to be able to develop their young players to the point where they can be battle tested for down the road.
And they are. They are getting battle tested, and they have good ball players. They
Good
just
young
need to
players.
work as a team. They have very, like as we said in the past, the Nets have done leaps and bounds considering they didn't have nothing to work with.
They went from nothing to having just a little bit.
Yeah, considering they had no draft choices.
And the draft choices that they did have, they wound up making some pretty decent picks. Karis LeVert, Isaiah Whitehead, and also signing guys off the scrap heap, too, like Spencer Dinwiddie and Quincy Acee, making the trade for Russell and also Timofey Mozgov. Also drafting Jarrett Allen, who's been a really, really good young big man for them to use.
Okafor.
Making the Jahlil Okafor trade, where they also got a good shooter in Nick Stauskas.
So they've done pretty good in that way.
Mm-hmm.
They've done okay that way. Again, they just have to play as a team.
Yeah,
They just
so
gotta
true.
Get a couple more players here and there, and they will build themselves as a good team.
Mm-hmm.
Now, will they be ever an elite team? That's a whole different.
They have
That's
not
the
done
whole
well against the
subject.
NBA's elite this year at all.
Will they ever be an elite team? That's a whole different subject.
Will they be
know.
an elite team? We're just going to have to wait and see. Can they be an elite team? If they continue to draft well, yeah, they can be.
Now with the New York Knicks, Kyle O'Quinn, the Knicks are trying to get rid of.
They've been looking to trade him for a long time now.
Billy and Gomez.
And Willie Hernan Gomez has gotten very, very, very little time lately.
Yeah, but did you hear about the new system now that they have so that they can play him more? Which is they're not gonna play little to little anymore. They're just gonna play big to little.
Which is probably a wise idea considering they're going up against a plethora of really athletic big men in the league.
And they do have, and they're athletic big men. The Knicks do have athletic big men. If you think about it,
The big men are okay.
They're better than they're a little better than average.
They're above average. They're slightly above average.
You got to give them a little bit more credit than what you give them for because
Slightly above average, though.
because they're not the elite, but they're not. They're about eights. If you're doing it from 1 to 10, they're about eights. They're not. They're a little bit above average because Kyle O'Quinn is doing very well,
Mm-hmm.
and he's in the last year of his contract, and that's probably why the Knicks want to get rid of him because he may not be on the Knicks next year.
Yeah.
And if you're going to trade for Billy or Willie Hernan Gomez, which some teams are interested in him.
Yeah. I can see why, though. He's young. He's a hard worker. He really gives them some tireless effort.
His defense is to be...
His defense sucks.
But he does do wonders for them. He does do wonders for them. And, again, if you decided to trade him, they were talking about if Knicks traded Willie, what could they get for him?
What could they get for him?
Yeah.
Hopefully, either a secondary go-to scorer or maybe a little more depth at point guard because there have been certain people who have been a little unhappy with the way the Knicks point guard rotation has been this year.
Well, right now, let me see teams. I'm just reading this, trying to read quickly. The Knicks do not want to give up the 23-year-old and then Gomez unless they get a prime talent in return and a second-round player.
Mm-hmm.
So they're saying here that enter the San Antonio Spurs, who can offer a heavily protected second-round draft pick and an opening prospect for a crowded position for his services. This may not be enough to sway the New York Knicks. So the San Antonio Spurs can trade Derek White and a 2018 second-round pick for Hernan Gomez. Do you think that would work?
Acquiring a guy like Derek White, who's a little unproven, well, let's put it this way. You can't really criticize them for going that far, although Derek White has been really, really underused this season. He's barely averaging 2 points a game. If he were to be acquired in a deal, hopefully the Knicks can turn him loose so he could show his all-around talent, though.
I'd still keep the team the way it is. If you're going to lose O'Quinn, you might as well keep Hernan Gomez and tell him, hey, listen, stay with us. We're going to use you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, unless it's one of those trades where it's going to blow your mind that you know you're getting something in return.
Right.
I would just keep the team as is for now, because right now they're saying that Ramon Session knows his next days could be numbered. And
that's another guy who's played very little.
Phil Jackson made eat raw meat on pre-draft day. Cantor wants more fourth quarter minutes. Can you blame him on fourth quarter?
Well, he needs to play better defense if he wants to play more fourth quarter minutes.
That's the thing, yeah. And Terry Burke.
You mean Trey Burke?
Trey Burke, right. Trey Burke.
Who's in the D-League.
Right. Imagine him coming up and then having, what's-his-name play with him when he comes back from injury.
Now, Trey Burke would be interesting because he's a young guy, but he's been around quite a few years, and he's not terrible. He just hasn't been able to prove himself that much lately. The Knicks signed him to put him in the D-League for a reason, and that's to give them point guard help. So maybe they should give Trey Burke a little bit of a hand.
They would have to get rid of the person that they're not using, which is Ramon Sessions.
Either buy him out or maybe see if they could cut a deal for him.
Or trade him, if there's a trade for him, because right now, now you got that guy that's injured. I forgot his name. Oh, damn, I don't know how I can forget this guy's name. Who's injured on the Knicks?
What's that?
Who's on the injured list right now for the
Tim
Knicks?
Hardaway Jr.
Tim Hardaway Jr. Imagine he wants to reunite with him, with Burke. Because he played with him, he knows how he works.
Because they played together at Michigan. That would be a really interesting combo right there. They worked tremendously at Michigan. But will that translate into the NBA, though?
You know, sometimes you need someone that you know how to play with. And maybe that magic could return again.
We'll see.
You know, you're hoping that the magic can return. First of all, you need Hardaway Jr. to come back.
Yeah.
And hopefully do what he can do best. And you're hoping for, let's say, next year, will Cantor come back? Will O'Quinn come back? back, if you decide, will McDermott come back next year? You have a lot of these one-year contracts.
Yeah.
That again, you have a decent Nick team, but because you have all these people that are leaving you, how can you build on teams that every time you're doing well, they always have these one-year contracts, such as, do you bring back Cantor next year?
The way he's playing right now, he's given them so much more than the Knicks could have asked of him. If he could play a little bit more defense, I would definitely bring him back. That's a guarantee. I would bring him back.
Do you bring back McDermott?
He's been such a good role player for them. I would bring him back as well.
Depending upon how much it costs.
Yeah,
right?
You don't teach shooting like that. That's learned within, and he's been nothing but a good shooter ever since his high school days. And not only that, but he's also the son of a coach who knows a little thing or two about the game.
Oh, and that's the thing. You know, Knicks brace for Nick. I'm seeing here Knicks brace for Russ to shake up as Hardaway nears return.
That means some people are going to be getting their walking papers.
You really think so?
Possibly.
Who do you think is going to get their walking papers? Ramon Sessions?
Possibly Ramon Sessions. Maybe Kyle O'Quinn, because he hasn't been getting the time that he was hoping for.
Quinn's been playing the fourth quarter, and he's been playing right after Cantor.
And the reason why is because he gives them a little bit more toughness defensively, although he's not really there offensively.
You know, you have to, you know, sometimes you have to give up a little to get a lot. The other team's got to supply the offensive where it's, think of it as having a catcher that can't hit and a second baseman that can't hit but is really good defensively, and your other ball players can hit.
Yeah.
And you have protection. That's what you got to think of it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that's the way I look at it. You know, you're giving up something, but you're getting something in return. If you know how to switch them back and forth, then you'll be okay.
True.
Michael Beasley.
He's done more than the Knicks could have asked from him. He's played well this year. Now,
again, another one-year contract.
Another one-year contract. He's going to be a difficult decision because as good of a low post presence as he is, he still has problems with staying away from the weed because he's a bit of a pothead, and also he's been a little loopy on the court in years past. So I would really think long and hard about whether the Knicks should want to bring him back or not.
Well, believe it or not, they actually have a lot of good people in the D League that they could actually bring back.
Mm-hmm.
Up from the D League. They have that 7-foot guy that's down there.
Luke Cornett, you're probably talking about.
Yeah, he's supposed to be a really good ball player himself. You got the other two guys that were really that the Knicks signed, that there were big deals at that time.
Damian Dotson is one of them.
Right, he's another one that could fit in right away.
He'll give them three-point shooting because he's a really good three-point shooter.
So, while you know that you have those guys, you really need a McDermott.
Yeah.
You really need a Cantor if you know you have those guys coming up from the D League.
The question is, if Cornett can't give them the type of scoring that Cantor does currently, and if Damian Dotson can just be given a little bit more playing time, I don't think the Knicks have really respected the kid as much as I thought they should have. That's why he's probably down in the D League right now. Then what was the sense in possibly letting those other guys go? And for the record, this is just playing what if. What if the Knicks decided to turn loose Enes Kanter and Doug McDermott and give Luke Cornett and Damian Dotson a shot, and those two youngsters don't pan out? Then what was the sense of giving up those other guys in the first place?
Oh, again, that's a hit or miss. That's why your scouts are supposed to be there and going, okay, these are the guys that are worth it. Because they may play well in the D League, but once they come up with, once they go into the really big leagues, that's when everything changes. I mean, look at Billy Donovan, great college kid, could not play a lick.
Nope.
Could coach, but
great
can't
coach
play for the he couldn't play a lick for the New York Knicks.
Yep.
He was playing scared and everything.
And now he's doing pretty well for himself with the Oklahoma City Thunder.
Exactly. He became a good coach.
Mm-hmm.
But you see that's the thing about the what ifs and the 1-year contracts and how much do you pay and who you're drafting next year.
Mm-hmm.
Who's going to be drafted next year? Will Porzingis stay?
I think that's a no-brainer, to be honest with you. Kristaps Porzingis is probably the closest thing that the Knicks have to a franchise player as they've had since Patrick Ewing got traded.
And you're right. Now, will Hornacek go? That's another thing.
That's a good question because I don't want to say he's on shaky ground, but at least he's done a little bit better than asked with the Knicks right now. Although, keep in mind, he's coached 2.5 years with the Suns. He's had 1.5 years with the Knicks. He still hasn't been in a playoff game as a head coach yet. Something's got to give.
Remember that 1 year that he was under the Phil Jackson thumb. Can you really say he had a shot since there was always disruption?
To be quite honest with you, Hector, the Knicks need stability on the sidelines just as much as they need stability in the locker room. They have got to give Jeff Hornacek a longer leash than 2 years. You can't build a team without a head.
There's plenty of other coaches out there right now. Oh, speaking of basketball, what did you think of St. John's and Georgetown again coming?
That was such a disappointing loss that St. John's suffered against Georgetown, especially considering, for one, the game itself was a really, really good game. It was very hard fought, going back and forth, but now the Red Storm are winless in conference play as of the Villanova game. And right now, they cannot afford to fall any further behind than they already have right now because they need something to build on going into the home stretch. But the game itself was a really, really good game, and it was wonderful seeing Patrick and Chris Mullin on the sidelines once again.
Yeah, when those guys played, it made college basketball really ignite. When Kim Mutombo was on the college, you used to hear about all those guys, Akeem Olajuwon. Now, is college basketball popular as it once was? Is it more popular now?
It's still popular. I mean, there's still a great crop of young players. The coaching stars continue to remain the same. I mean, you have a couple of guys that wound up getting their walk-in papers, but you still have guys like Krzyzewski, you still have Roy Williams, you still have Bob Huggins, and guys like that. Unfortunately, we have 20 seconds left, so we're going to have to say goodbye, man.
Oh, I'm sorry we took so long. I forgot to talk about football, but you know what?
who's going to make it to the playoffs right now? Who's the winning?
I like New England and Minnesota to go to the Super Bowl. That's it for us, folks. Good night.